Hello, I'm Kiara and I'm 29 years old. I only recently got divorced, and the story behind it is actually pretty wild, and I want to share it here. To start off, let me introduce you to my now ex-husband, Mikey. Mikey and I met through a dating app. We shared a lot of similar interests and actually got along pretty well over text. For our first date, we went to a bar where we ended up having a great time. And from there on, we always found an excuse to just hang out with each other. Obviously, that meant that we went on a lot more dates, and before I knew it, we were properly dating. At the time, both of us were working, but mine paid a lot more than his. He still lived with his parents while I had my own house, so he would come over to my place a lot more often than I would go over to his. Of course, I had met his parents, Janice and Hugo, but only in passing. Even in those few times that I met them, they seemed lovely. About a year and a half into Mikey and I dating, I asked him to move in with me. That marked a turning point in our relationship because that only brought us closer. The next 2 years was super blissful, so it came as no surprise when Mikey proposed and I said yes. Our wedding was an elegant affair where we invited a lot of people from both our families. It was around then that I properly interacted with his family. I usually had a very demanding job, so I was almost always way too tired to do anything but come back home and sleep, which thankfully Mikey was very understanding about. At the wedding, Janice invited me over to their place for dinner the next week, and I figured it had been high time that I spent proper time with them, so I agreed. When we went over to their place, Janice and Hugo greeted me very warmly. The dinner table was already set with dinner and each plate was served. As we sat down to eat, Janice was very insistent about where I was supposed to sit. I thought it was odd, but I didn't think too much about it. Dinner was great and I genuinely had a good time with Mikey's parents. Throughout it, they kept thanking me for everything I did for Mikey, and of course I told them that I loved him and I would do anything for him. But when I returned home, my stomach began to feel really upset. It hurt really bad and I felt like I needed to throw up. Mikey held my hair back as I puked everything that I had ingested in the day. I felt so sick, but at that time, I didn't think that it had anything to do with Janice's food. I had gone out to eat sushi with some friends that day and just chalked it up to that. The next time Janice and Hugo invited us over was about 4 months later. Once again, I had been way too caught up with work to actually go and spend time with them, so this felt like a good way to catch up. But once again, Janice was insistent about where I was supposed to sit, and after I came back home, I was violently sick. That was when I started to think something was up. I didn't say anything because it felt rude to just accuse Janice of something without having any proof. Plus, I knew that Mikey loved and respected his mom to bits and would not believe me unless I had something as proof. Well, a few months later, the same thing happened again. And that time, I didn't keep my mouth shut. I confronted Mikey about it. Okay, we need to talk. Yeah? What's up? Don't you think it's odd that every time we go for dinner at your parents' place, I come back and I get violently ill? What exactly are you trying to imply? I don't know, Mikey. It's just odd, isn't it? Whenever we go out to eat, nothing happens, but only at their place. Are you trying to say that my mom is messing with the food? If the shoe fits. Do you have any proof of her doing that? No, but then how dare you accuse her of something as heinous as that? My mother is the sweetest woman on earth and she would never do something like that, ever. Mikey, I know you love your mom, but please, 3 times is a lot of times to get sick in the same fashion. Stop coming up with theories. They're a waste of time. And I don't want you saying anything against my mother anymore. With that, Mikey went and slept in the guest bedroom. I felt bad for saying something, but I knew that something was definitely wrong there. I became very paranoid about eating at his parents' place because of it. I didn't want to stir up any drama between them or us, so I just made up excuses to not go over. There was a point, though, where Mikey behaved differently after coming back from dinner with his parents, where he just seemed so shut off and distant, and no matter what I said to try and get him to talk, he just didn't. In hindsight, I guess that was when he found out what Janice had been doing to my food. As much as I avoided going over it, I couldn't never do it. So I would go over only on special occasions, and 2 special occasions happened to be pretty back to back. Janice and Hugo's anniversary and Hugo's birthday. I absolutely could not say no at that point, so I went. Of course, when I got back home, I was sick again. The first time I kept quiet about it, but the second time I approached Mikey about it again. We ended up getting into a huge fight about it because he felt like I was attacking Janice. I felt frustrated too because I was the one that was sick and I was only trying to tell him my concerns. I tried over and over again to talk to Mikey about it and maybe find some other reason for my sickness, but he wouldn't sit with me because every time I brought up my sickness, he took it as a personal attack on him and his family. I was tired of the arguing, but even more tired of getting so sick. And then Janice invited us over to dinner because Hugo got a raise, and so I went. And got sick. No surprise. This was the 6th time it happened, and I was thoroughly done. I had tried time and time again to justify this sickness as a coincidence or something wrong with the food I consumed before. But 6 times is way too much to be a coincidence. I knew that next month was Janice's birthday, so she would invite us over for dinner, and I knew I had to seize my chance to snoop around. I would ask Mikey for help, but he seemed hell-bent on his parents not doing anything wrong. I needed to find the truth, or I knew that I would go insane. The next month came before I knew it. I was busy getting ready and I prepared myself to snoop around. I bought a disguised hidden camera just in case I wasn't able to snoop around. When we got to Mikey's parents' place, I greeted them warmly. I asked Janice if I could help with the food, but she was adamant about me not helping. "Why don't I help you with the food?" "Oh, no, absolutely not." "But it's your birthday. Why don't you go and relax while I take over?" No, you should go sit down, especially considering you're our guest." "Nonsense. I'm your daughter-in-law, right? We're family." "Kiara, it's really okay. I have a lot to get done and I don't need any help." "If you insist, but let me know if you need help with setting the dishes or even washing them after." "Oh yes, you can do that, but before that I need Mikey's help in the kitchen." "What could he do that I can't?" "Oh, nothing. I just need him to get something heavy from the top cabinet." "Oh, all right. I'll be sitting on the patio, but first I'll just go grab myself a bottle of water." Janice being super insistent on me not helping her only made me more suspicious. Why did she actually need Mikey's help? I was tall and pretty strong, which I can confidently say because I do work at the gym. I didn't want to think that Mikey was involved in any way, but maybe that was why he was so adamant about nothing being wrong with the food at his parents' place, because he knew what was happening. I didn't know how to feel about the possibility of Mikey being in on it, but I thought that it would be a problem for me to deal with later. First, I needed to find an inconspicuous place to set up the camera that would also capture the stove where Janice was cooking. Thankfully, Janice, Mike, and Mike's dad, Hugo, were far too busy chatting to realize how long I was gone. I also decided to snoop around and see if I could find anything myself. I didn't even have to actually look very far because on the counter right next to the stove was a bunch of spices, one of which was nutmeg. I am hypersensitive to nutmeg, which means that my body treats nutmeg like an infection, and I experience allergy symptoms. Thankfully, I don't have the worst case of it, and it only affects me when I ingest it. But my symptoms include stomach aches, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, all of which I've been having every time I went over to eat there. Seeing the bottle of nutmeg there open made my blood boil. I remember telling Mikey to tell his parents about my nutmeg allergy the first time I had dinner at their place. So, had Janice actually been adding it to my food? And was Mikey in the know and still letting her do it? I managed to calm myself down by telling myself that all my questions would be answered when I saw the footage on the camera. I took a bottle of water and went and sat on the patio. Pretty soon, Hugo joined me. I decided to test the waters and see if he was aware of what was happening. "So, how's it going?" "Oh, not so good. My health has kind of been acting funny." "Oh no, what do you mean?" "I've been having these really bad stomach aches and diarrhea." "Do you know what's causing it?" "Funny thing, it only happens after I eat at your place." "At ours? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there something you're allergic to?" "Yeah, nutmeg, but that's about it." "Well, I know that Janice hates nutmeg with a passion, so that could not be the case. Does it not happen when you eat elsewhere?" "No, I tested it out and nothing happened. I'll probably just visit the doctor if I get sick again after this." "Yeah, and let me know if you need my help." So Hugo was not aware of what was happening. He seemed genuinely concerned for me, and I didn't think that he would have been capable of acting too realistically. I mean, I've seen the man try to keep a surprise from Mikey before, and that was painful to watch. I waited until Janice called us in for dinner to make my excuse to go get the camera back. I walked into the kitchen and took the camera off the wall where I had positioned it. Then I went back into the dining room and just ate the food that was served to me. There was no way for me to check the footage until I went back home and inserted the SD card into my laptop. I decided to just bear with everything for just one more night. By the time I got back home, I was sick once again. You would think that after 7 times of experiencing this, I'd get used to it, but it really felt like the first time all over again. Mikey barely spared a glance my way, which only made me think even more that he was involved. I had to deal with my sickness while staying up until Mikey fell asleep to review the footage. By the time I started feeling better, Mikey had been fast asleep. I removed the SD card from the camera and inserted it into my laptop. I was nervous to play the footage because if it revealed what I had been suspicious of, I didn't know how I'd react or feel. When I played the footage, everything I had been scared of was confirmed. I saw Janice and Mikey happily talking away while she stirred the pot of food, and then she picked up the bottle of nutmeg and turned to Mikey, who laughed at her as she put it into the stew. I was appalled. Mikey, of all people, knew just how much I had been suffering, and he continued to let me get hurt. This was not something I was going to let go so easily. I didn't want either of them to realize that I had found out about their gimmick, so I pretended like everything was fine while I planned my next course of action. The first thing that I was going to do was file for divorce. I lied about going to work the next day and instead went straight to the lawyer's office and started the filing process. Then I went over to my mom's place to try and figure out what to do next. "Hi, honey. What brings you over right now? Is everything all right?" "Hi, Mom. Actually, everything's going to hell right now." "Uh-oh, what happened?" "Well, I'm getting a divorce." "Divorce? What do you mean? Why?" "Well, for the past few months, every time I went over to Janice and Hugo's for dinner, I would come back home really sick. I would tell Mikey that Janice must have done something, but he would always brush me off. Oh no, do you think she was adding nutmeg? Yeah, but I don't think so. I know. I decided to do some snooping around. I also managed to get a hidden camera to secretly record everything that happened in that kitchen. I watched her put the nutmeg in as she laughed about it. What a horrible woman! What is wrong with her? How are you feeling right now? I'm okay, but I wasn't last night. Okay, that's good to hear, but what does that have to do with you getting a divorce? Mikey stood by Janice as she put the nutmeg in and laughed with her. What? Yeah, I don't think I can spend any more time with him. I can't be with someone who would intentionally harm me or even watch someone harm me. Of course! And you can come and stay with me, okay? I'll be here to support you throughout. Thanks, Mom. But I was also thinking, do you think you could help me do something to get revenge? Oh, absolutely. But first, why don't we have some lunch? I promise there won't be any nutmeg. Being with my mom only helped me feel better. She had a way of easing all my worries and turning my bad mood around. We chatted over lunch about everything else, excluding what was currently going on in my marriage. When we were done, we sat down on the couch and began to talk about potential ways to get back. We eventually decided to mess with Janice's food. Mikey would get what he deserved when I served him the divorce. Thankfully, we had separate accounts for everything and the house was in my name. He would get absolutely nothing and he would go back to living with his parents. But messing with Janice's food while it was only a few of us present was not going to be very fun, so I had to find a reason to throw a party where people from both Mikey and my family could attend, and we found the perfect reason. It was my mom's birthday in 2 weeks and she was turning 50, which is a milestone birthday. It was the perfect reason to invite a bunch of people over, and watching Janice get humiliated would only make it better. When I got back home that evening, I talked to Mikey about hosting a party for my mom. So, it's my mom's birthday pretty soon. Oh, right. Is she doing something? Not really. I was thinking, do you think we could throw her a party at our place? I don't mind, but why our place? I was thinking we could do it like a surprise party for her, considering she's turning 50. Oh, yeah, absolutely, we can. Great! And about the guests, who do you think we should invite? Well, for sure your family, and see if her friends would like to join too. Sounds great. You know what? Invite your family too. Are you sure? My family isn't exactly close to yours. It's all right, we can bond them. We'll make this a big celebration. Sounds like a blast. Everything was going according to plan. I was busy preparing for the party for next week. I prepared all the food and cleaned the place up. Ever since I filed for a divorce, I began to notice things about Mikey that irked me even more. Like him not even helping me with the party one bit, and instead watching TV as I worked my butt off. It only made me feel better about my decision to leave him. As the preparations for the party were coming together, I also went and collected the divorce papers. Everything was set. Finally, on the day of the party, the guests all gathered in our backyard and surprised my mom. The evening went well, and when it came to dinner time, I handed out everyone's food already served on plates. That allowed me to mess with Janice's food separately. Now, I didn't know about any of her food allergies, but I did know that laxatives would induce the same symptoms that I had. So I mixed some strong laxatives into her food. I waited half an hour before noticing Janice starting to look uncomfortable. She excused herself to go to the washroom, but the washrooms were in use. Well, we had 2 bathrooms and my mother stayed in one of them for a couple of minutes while I locked the other one. Janice looked wildly uncomfortable by that point. She was pale and sweaty. I made sure to make a scene about it by loudly asking Janice if she was okay. It drew everyone's attention to her. She looked embarrassed as she said she was fine. Finally, my mom walked out and apologized because she was just touching up her makeup. That only made Janice angry, which was funny to watch because she looked like a cartoon character at that moment. The crowd went back to talking to each other until we heard loud sounds coming from the bathroom. Everyone went silent as the sounds came through. 5 minutes later, Janice walked out and the crowd erupted in laughter. Janice's face grew red from embarrassment. She walked up to me and poked my chest accusingly. "You did this." "What do you mean?" "I know you messed with my food." "Oh, Janice, I don't think so." "You don't think so? Then why am I the only one with an upset stomach?" "Wait a minute. Is this why you asked me to invite my family over too? So you could mess with my mom?" "I just know she did. I was completely fine before this." "Listen, Kiara, I know you have this stupid doubt, but this has gone too far. You're physically hurting my mother." "What doubt are you talking about?" "You know, the silly one about my mom messing with your food whenever we go to my folks' place to eat." "Oh, you mean like this?" I sent the video to every guest sitting there. Everyone's phones pinged and they opened the video to watch Janice put something in the stew while she and Mikey laughed together. Mikey and Janice also received the video and their faces grew pale as they watched it. "So it was a silly doubt, Mikey? Because you know what's in that bottle? Nutmeg. You know how bad my stomach aches because of it, and yet you stood by Janice while she poisoned the food." I swear it's not what you think." "I literally don't see what other explanation you have. I can't stand you anymore, so here," handing him the divorce papers, "get out of my house and my life." "No, don't do that. Mikey is innocent. I just did that because I never liked you and I knew that Mikey would never say a word against me." "Well, that's even worse to know. If my husband can't even stand up for me against his mother, he doesn't deserve to be my husband. You know, you're lucky all I did was this. I could have pressed charges, but I'm only going to let it go if you guys quietly leave." With that, Janice and Mikey quietly left. Hugo stayed back to apologize for their behavior, and I assured him that he had done nothing wrong and had nothing to apologize for. I also asked him to stay back and continue to celebrate with us. But I guess it's safe to say that Janice and Mikey's reputation in the family has gone down by a lot. My divorce just got finalized and I am a free woman as of today. It will take some time to get over everything because as strong as I was with handling everything, now that it's all over, reality has been hitting me. I will never get to spend another day in Mikey's arms, and I will miss that for a while. But I know that I'm strong enough to get over it and move on. And of course, for those of you wondering, my mom was super happy with the outcome as well. Plus, I did take her to this really fancy restaurant to both celebrate her milestone birthday and thank her for her support and help.